Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of First Impressions on the Scratch and Track podcast, presented by the Dude and Groom Show and co-produced by Mr. IBEST. I'm the Dude.
And I am Grim, and today we are going into the blue with Broken Bells, the third studio album by those cats.
Dude, first in 8 years. Holy hell.
Wow, has it been that long?
Yeah, dude.
Wow, I did not realize that. Holy cow.
Yeah,
I guess I haven't followed them as closely as I know you have.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was aware when they came out. It just doesn't feel like it could have been 8 years ago for after the disco.
Right. Well, it's kind of funny because when I was like doing a little research on this, they actually like started recording. They were like so excited after coming out after the disco and then being on tour that, man, as soon as they were done, they went back to the studio and started making songs and recording and stuff again. And, you know, came up with a few things and then took a break and then like did a few things, took a break. And I think it was just like on and off like that for a while. But, you know, it's tough because then, you know, James Mercer, he went and did stuff with the Shins, and, you know, Danger Mouse, Brian Burton, he's doing, you know, producing and stuff with other people. Yeah. So, and then you have, you know, a global shutdown, and there's just like, you know, sometimes things just get in the way and all of a sudden you blink and it's 8 years later, man.
Yeah, supply chain. I mean,
we
know that's been a thing. Right?
I know.
I mean, good thing they didn't need any microchips. Wait in line.
Yeah. But, you know, maybe before we get into some of the deeper stuff in the album, I know we kind of discussed a little bit offline and, you know, over a couple weekends ago, our first impressions of it. But what was your kind of first impression of it? What did you, in maybe comparing it to the other two albums as well, you know, like?
Oh, it's definitely more subdued. And I wouldn't say the other albums had like a hip hop in any, not so much influence, but I felt like maybe there was some sort of elements of things like that brought in from Danger Mouse, but I did not feel that way necessarily with this album, which is cool because it's different than what they've done. But one thing I wanted to comment on regarding this compared to the other two, I really like how they used this ball, and it is very consistent on their covers. It's just an interesting sort of thing, and each one has been a different take on it. Yeah. Which is kind of interesting because they still kind of carry these similarities through, but then there's a different feel to the music itself. But this is definitely more subdued, more I guess more produced. It's you know what I mean? There's just a lot of layers there. There's things are kind of thick and lush would be good descriptors, I would say.
Sure. Yeah, I would say I think you know, when I first heard it, you know, my first listen to it, I was kind of disappointed in it. I was, I don't know. I was expecting something. I wasn't expecting something sort of subdued. I was hoping and wanted something that, you know,
you thought it was going to be RTJ4.
Yeah, exactly. You know, something that brought, I think, a little more energy.
And
so, you know, initially going into it with that mindset and hearing that, I, you know, just didn't have the best overall, you know, first impression of it. But then, like most albums, you listen to it a little more. And, you know, I think when it first came out, that first, you know, weekend or whatever, I probably listened to it like 3 or 4 times. And then I put it down for a few days or so.
Yeah.
Listened to it again. And I was like, okay, I like it more. And then today, definitely after putting it down for another few days, was definitely more into it today. I still think the second half, it's only 9 songs. I do feel like to me, it really picks up with, I believe, I want to say it's track 4, which is Love on the Run. I feel like that's where it kind of really hits its groove and I get into it. That song, One Night, I think those are sort of my 2 favorite songs on the album. And I feel like that's when it really, really kind of gets going. But it just, the first 3 tracks to me are just, it's almost like a lull. And I'm like, man, you guys
Into the Blue.
Yeah. Into the Blue, you know.
Is what it says.
Yeah. So, you know, initially that just, you know, I feel like it takes a little bit for the album to get warmed up. I think that's probably the best way to say it.
I really enjoyed the chase, the way the chase was built. There were elements that reminded me of almost like a Western.
Yeah, I could see that.
And it really subtle. I mean, but that did come to mind with that. But I would see, and this is one of these things where, of course, people just want to do what they do, and they're not thinking about documenting every moment of their life.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to get sort of a window into the creative process of how these two guys work, because I think many people always, including myself, always saw this as a really interesting partnership.
Yeah.
But one that worked amazingly well, because each person seems to bring something different to the table that really complements each other well. And that's what I think is so cool about it. And another thing I think is cool is a lot of people do one-offs.
Right.
Like that Elvis Costello and the Roots album. That's a really sweet album, but it's kind of just a one-off. It's a collaboration that was great, and it took place and two really different elements came together. But this isn't that, because they've kept it going, which I think is really, really cool. And I don't know, although I will say I didn't follow it as closely as you, I'm always interested to hear whatever they're going to come out with.
Yeah. Well, I think even Brian Burton was kind of saying, like, he's like, yeah, this is like the only band he considers himself in. He's like,
which is kind of cool.
Which is true. And he says, like, he's just like, yeah, I feel like, I just hang out with my friend, and, we kind of like
happen to make sweet
put some
albums.
tracks up, and put out records every once in a while and everything. And it's like, I think James Mercer sort of feels the same way. And if there's no pressure, because that's the thing with a lot of bands, like you're in a band with, like, 3, 4, 5 guys or something like that.
Sometimes 6.
That's and sometimes 6, and that's kind of like, people don't always venture out. I mean, some people do, and they'll do little side projects here and there. But for them, it's just like, it's just them two, and it's like, okay, well, I don't think they feel pressure to, like, get the next album out, because Jamie, he's got the shins, and Burton, like, produces others.
They're both very self-sufficient musicians in their own right. So you're right. I mean, it can truly kind of go back to what people always started doing it for in the first place. Right? Because it's not your paycheck. It's not putting dinner on the table at this point. No. It's just purely because you want to do it, which is great, because I feel like once things really blow up for a lot of people, it probably becomes this machine that you have to keep feeding.
Welcome to it.
Yeah. And next thing you know, you're putting out 5 albums in a year, 3 of them in October.
Exactly. Thanks, KG. But and I think one of the nice things they have is, they talked about, we recorded some stuff, and then they took a break for a little bit. They come back, they record some stuff, and they take a break for a little bit, and they just kind of kept doing that. And they even said that they kind of felt like, I think James Mercer said that he felt like this was sort of the album that they, I think, like you were saying, the most produced, where they felt like, because they had the most time, there was no rush to get it done. Yeah. And they were just like, hey, we're going to keep messing with this. And I forget what song it was. So you said your favorite song was The Chase. And
that's pretty good.
Yeah. And that was one of the ones that they did, like, years and years ago when they first got off tour, and they started using samples. And so they never finished it, though, because they kept having issues with it. And so Danger Mouse, he plugged in this loop that Questlove had given him, and they reworked the song and, like, made it fit.
That's cool.
Yeah.
See, that's really cool. I do also, I mean, the titles or the song's good too, but I I really do like the title of "We're Not in Orbit Yet." That's that's just a great title.
Yet. So yeah, man, I will say I'm pleasantly surprised. Like this album has grown on me a little bit. I think once I calmed down my expectations that I wanted it to be a little more kind of energetic.
It's not about you, dude.
Yeah, it's not about me. Yeah. Never was. But yeah, dude, there's some good tracks. I think one thing was, and I'm not sure if it's Into the Blue, but within the first couple tracks, there's like some more slower acoustic-y songs. And I felt like when I first heard those, I was like, wow, that felt like a lot like some of the Shin stuff that is kind of come out more recently. And I haven't loved that as much. And I was like, man, it just felt more like the Shins than it did feel like Broken Bells for me when I initially heard it. So right. You know, and whereas when I look at their first two albums, that doesn't sound like the Shins at all to me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
you know,
it's
so that's just what I think.
No, that's fair. I appreciate your impression.
Yeah.
Well, your first one. After that, I could really give a shit less, but
so yeah. But yeah, we definitely like to know what you guys think below. Where you rank this album? Are you excited to see? You know, I imagine they'll be, you know, touring live and promoting this album. At least I hope they are. And
I'd like to see what they do with the next cover art.
Yeah, I bet it's gonna have that ball on it.
I like how they incorporate the hand is like sort of drawn and has these waves, and it's really cool.
It's really trippy. Cool. It's trippy. So, anything else you got to say, Graham? Are we good to go?
Like, subscribe, and comment.
Get into the blue.
Get into the blue. Out of the blue and into the black. Into the blue. All right.
Into the blue.
Time to go. Dude Grim Show.
Scratch the Track is produced by the Dude Grim. Additional music provided by More. That's ... MORE and the Tims. TIMNZ. Copyright 2020 to the Dude Grim Show.